You're listening to the Cyberwire Network, powered by N2K.
Security culture is important. It's something that lives and breathes in every organization, whether you know it or not. And so the question becomes, how intentional are you about the security culture that you have? How sustainable is that? What do you need to do about it?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the CyberWire's Hacking Humans podcast, where each week we look behind the social engineering scams, phishing schemes, and criminal exploits that are making headlines and taking a heavy toll on organizations around the world. I'm Dave Bittner, and joining me is Joe Kerrigan from the Johns Hopkins University Information Security Institute. Hello, Joe.
Hi, Dave.
We got some good stories to share this week, and later in the show, Perry Carpenter returns to discuss his book, The Security Culture Playbook, an executive guide to reducing risk and developing your human defense layer. But first, a word from our sponsors at KnowBe4. Even if you don't know it, your organization has a security culture. We should all strive for a strong one, with users reporting phishing emails as soon as they see them and discussing the latest news-making data breach around the water cooler. But we also live in the real world. Many organizations likely have a security culture that could use some improvement. KnowBe4 has been leading the push to improve organizational security cultures through new school security awareness training for a little more than a decade. Stay with us, and in a few minutes, we'll hear from our sponsors at KnowBe4 about a new way to build your security culture to be the best it can be. All right, Joe, before we jump into our stories here, we got some follow-up from a listener who prefers to be nameless, but someone who I regularly interact with via email. So
okay.
I know who this person is.
Very good.
And that they are who they say they are.
I don't know who they are.
I will read the message that they sent to us.
Okay.
And they said, as you know, I am both a retired Fed and a cybersecurity geek post-retirement with an emphasis on anti-scams and anti-fraud awareness. I always recommend not messing around with scammers for fun. They are professional scammers for a living. The average person is not. There is a significant knowledge and experience imbalance going on here. The average person is likely not as slick as a professional scammer. There have been instances where somebody messing around with a scammer and who have gone down the rabbit hole of conversational and transactional engagement for fun have wound up getting scammed. And as Joe alluded to, scammers likely have your contact info and can make your life absolutely miserable if you set them off. I know a number of people who have had to get a new phone number and change an email address in order to put an end to the bombardment of misery that a pissed-off scammer was deluging them with.
Right.
There is no upside value proposition to messing with a scammer. One should simply not respond at all to communication that is of the sort that we all instantly recognize as being a scam attempt or is just peculiar. Simply ignore the communication and block the sender as best you can. Any engagement at all only serves to guarantee more contact from scammers.
These are good points. And
Yeah.
I've said this in scam baiting. We're still going to probably have scam baiting catches of the day on here.
Yeah.
And I'm still going to watch people like Qdoba or whatever the guy's name is that does the scam baiting. And the guy from England who does a really good job, who's like made a almost a career out of this.
Right.
But that guy is someone who lives in this environment, right?
Right.
The author of this letter is absolutely correct that you are dealing with people who already have your contact information when they come in. And I've done this several times where I've been like, I really want to mess with this guy.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes I think, well, they already know who I am.
Right.
And it probably isn't hard to find out more information. If I had set up a fake account, then I would mess with them.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that he says that people have, I'm assuming it's a he,
Yeah.
that people have played along with the scammer trying to mess with them and then still gotten scammed.
Yeah.
You know, the one of the things they tell you in sales, I remember everybody, I had a brief but failed sales career. Just keep the client engaged. Keep talking to them.
Right.
It's the same thing in scams. They don't care if they think that you're scam baiting them. They probably are savvy to that right off the bat.
Right.
So if they're just like, I just got to keep this guy talking and keep him going, and eventually I'll get some money out of him.
Yeah.
Could be.
They're the professionals.
Right. And they're the guys that do this 60 hours a week.
Right. So they have a big bag of tricks.
Yep.
Much larger than yours.
Yep.
So I think this is wise advice and a good reminder that as tempting as it is and as fun as it may seem like it's going to be, you are coming into this engagement outmatched.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's jump into some stories here. Joe, why don't you kick things off for us?
Dave, my story comes from Mandiant, which is now part of Google Cloud, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And it was written by Rommel Joven.
Okay.
Or perhaps Joven, I'm not sure, and Ng Chun Kiat.
Okay.
And I hope I'm not mangling those names, but I fear that I am.
Fair enough.
And the article, it's a blog posting. It's called "The Spies Who Loved You: Infected USB Drive Steals Secrets." And it's talking about these 3 campaigns that Mandiant has observed that are using USB drives to steal secrets. These are pretty significant campaigns. Now, the first one is actually in an entirely different article. So we'll put a link to the first article, but if you click on the first link in that article from Mandiant, you go to another article or blog post that they've made that's called "Always Another Secret, Lifting the Haze on China Nexus Espionage in Southeast Asia."
Okay.
And this is talking about a collection of USB devices that have been dropped around various areas, including Southeast Asia, the U.S., Europe, and the Asia-Pacific Japanese region.
Yeah.
But it seems that every time that these malicious USBs are activated, they're trying to get in somewhere in the Philippines.
So that's where they're phoning home to?
Right. Well, they're trying to attack somebody in the Philippines.
Oh. Okay.
Yep.
Interesting.
And they believe that this is a Chinese organization. I don't think Mandiant is actually doing a full-blown attribution here. That's really difficult to do, but they're saying this has, they assess it as having a Chinese nexus or China nexus.
Yeah.
And they are calling this threat UNC 4191, which I think is Mandiant's term for an unclassified threat and then just a number.
Okay.
But they've observed a bunch of malware that includes something called NCAT, which is a way of opening a reverse shell back to the command and control, which lets them do whatever they want.
Mm-hmm.
This stuff is all written in C++ or C and C++, and it's going to happen as soon as you plug the drive in. The second attack is called SOGU, S-O-G-U malware. It's the same kind of thing. They're seeing it across all kinds of industries and geographies. It is being released in the U.S., all across Asia, in Australia, in Saudi Arabia, in Egypt, in France, Italy, a lot of European countries, England and Ireland, or I should say the United Kingdom and Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
They're just listed as one country here, but it's going across all kinds of different industries, and the number one industry is pharmaceuticals at 11.8%, and that's also tied at number one with IT. So I don't know what they're going after here, but it looks like there's a broad swath of industry here.
Yeah.
Going all the way down to education, finance, and nonprofits. So I think this is just a let's see what we can gather kind of thing. But what's really happening is these are data exfiltration tools.
Mm-hmm.
So these guys are staging and then exfiltrating all this any data they can find, and they're sending it back to wherever it goes to. And this SOGU malware is also linked to China. The third one is actually targeting oil and gas organizations in Asia, and this one they have not linked to China. It's a campaign they're calling UNC 4698. They're targeting, of course, oil and gas, but they're targeting organizations in Asia. They're executing payloads on Windows command prompts and using removable media to create local staging directories, which is where they're going to muster all the data before they send it out.
It's interesting that these things kind of come in waves.
Right.
They ebb and flow. For years ago, we heard of things being dropped in USB drives, and then that sort of faded away. I think his awareness increased about it.
Yeah.
But now it's back.
Now it's back. And that's an excellent question. Why is this resurging?
Yeah.
Or why is maybe this case is kind of unique? Maybe it's a blip on the radar, but or maybe it's just the same level of noise. We just haven't been paying attention to it. But this is just wherever you live or work, don't pick up random USB drives that might say something interesting on the outside,
Right.
Perhaps something prurient that makes you think, "Ooh, I really want to look at what's on here."
Right.
And then plug it into your computer or your organization's computer.
Right. Plug it into the person in the cubicle next to you.
Don't do that either. Don't do any of that.
While they're at lunch.
While they're at lunch. You've still just hosed your company.
Yeah, right. What you do, you go to one of your competitors.
Yes.
And you plug it into their computer.
There you go. That's what you do.
Yeah. Now, it's interesting to me, this notion of dropping these devices, around the world and then having them target folks in the Philippines.
Right.
Like, are they trying to make it seem like the traffic isn't coming from China, I guess?
I will bet what they're doing is they're targeting organizations that they know do business with the target organization in the Philippines.
Oh, okay.
So they're they're going into the parking lots of those places and just dropping USB drives down.
Right. So they have an established relationship, so chances are there's, like, the two companies aren't on each other's block lists.
Right.
For IT stuff.
Exactly. So, like, for example, I know in the 80s, the World Bank did some work with the Philippine government.
Yeah.
So if you were targeting the Philippine government, it would be great to go to the World Bank and put some USB drives in the parking lot there and see what happens.
Right.
I don't know if that relationship still exists. I don't know if the Filipino government is the one they're going after.
Yeah.
But it's, that's what I think is going on here. And then the command and control looks like it's in China.
Yeah.
For the two they're attributing to China.
There's I remember a few years back that there were lots of organizations. It was trending that there were lots of organizations that wouldn't even allow you to plug a USB device into your computer at all.
Yeah, there's a number of organizations that still have that requirement.
Yeah.
I know that in the United States Department of Defense, there are some organizations that say, yeah, you can't put a USB device into this computer at all. And what they do with the external facing ones is just fill them with epoxy.
Right. Wow.
So you can't physically put one in.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember one time, this is years ago in a previous career, I was at an event, and I was back in the AV table where all it was just like a executives meeting, annual meeting for executives at a big multinational corporation.
Right.
So they're in a big hotel, and they've got, presenters and screens and projectors and sound and all that kind of stuff. And I was one of the folks back in the back, at the table that runs all that equipment. And I was sitting there by the computer that was running all the slides. And one of the participants, just one of the executives who was there, just casually walks up with his phone and just plugs into my computer that was running the presentation. Like, doesn't ask, just plugs it in. And I gave him a look like,
what are you doing?
Yes. He's like, my phone needs to be charged. I was like,
No.
I don't care. Like, at this moment, this is the most important computer in the building, right? Like, yeah, people.
Did he not like the guy on stage or the girl on stage? I mean,
that's a good question.
Yeah, maybe he was trying to hose that presentation up.
I don't know. The other funny thing I remember from that presentation, it was like, evidently, company-wide, this organization had some sort of system in place where all their computers would be updated at a certain time of day, like, let's just say 3:00 in the afternoon.
Right.
Right?
Great time to update.
Yeah. So we're in this big meeting, this big off-site meeting, and I'm using one of their computers to run the presentation. And sure enough, at 3:00, up pops the window to update, and everybody in the audience just laughs their butts off because they have all experienced the pain of being interrupted by a mandatory update at 3 p.m. Like, all business screeched to a halt at 3:00 every day. So Anyway, I digress.
I think we do a lot of digression on this show lately, Dave.
It's part of our charm. All right. Well, we will have a link to that story in the show notes. My story this week comes from the folks over at Yahoo Finance. This is an article written by Janine Mancini, and it's titled "Tech Executive Falls Victim to $450,000 Scam on Dating Site. The Cruel Pig Butchering Scheme Going Around." Now, you and I have talked about pig butchering before.
Yes, we have.
Which you want to give us a quick explanation of that, Joe?
So pig butchering is kind of like a combination of a romance scam and a crypto scam. So you start with a romance scam, and then after you've got the person hooked, the target hooked, you then start saying, hey, by the way, I'm making tons of money in crypto.
Right.
And then you have an entirely fake setup for dealing with crypto, and you can even show the people when they deposit crypto in their account.
Right.
The account in air quotes, right? It's not really their account. You're just giving them a wallet that you control, but you can then make it look like they're earning money. And some of these guys even send back the profits. Like the victim may first say, okay, well, I'm going to send you $50.
Yeah.
And see how this goes. And they'll send them back $100, $200.
Right.
And then the person will say, cool, man, now I trust you.
Yeah.
I'm going to send you $10,000.
Right.
And that's when they exit.
Well, this is one of those stories. This is about a woman named Shreya Datta, who was a successful executive at a tech company here in the U.S. Now, I'm going to read the first two paragraphs of this story. And I just want to be clear here that I'm not trying to, victim shame Miss Datta, but I just want to kind of play red flag bingo with you, Joe. All right?
Okay.
So it's the article starts and it says, Shreya Datta spent months swiping through dating apps, searching for a connection when she encountered Ansel Mali, a self-proclaimed wine trader from France, on Hinge.
Okay.
Mali claimed he had recently relocated to Philadelphia. Once they transitioned their conversation to WhatsApp.
There's one.
Ding, 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 ding.
Right.
Mali swiftly deleted his Hinge profile.
There's another one.
Expressing a desire to prioritize their connection and focus solely on Datta.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Recently relocated to West Philadelphia from France.
Right. We are from France.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, you go with that one. I'm going in West Philadelphia. That's and that's kind of a red flag, but that's plausible.
Sure.
But then there's the platform change.
Yep.
Which is a big red flag. It should be a big red flag.
Right.
And then the deleting of the Hinge profile. Now, Hinge, if I believe their marketing, which I don't know if this is true or not, but I've seen ads for them, they say they're the dating app that's meant to be deleted.
Oh.
Right? So when your data is gone from Hinge, it's gone.
Oh, I see.
And then if you want to go back, you have to create a new profile.
Oh. So they're claiming an enhanced level of privacy.
Correct.
Okay.
So while this is great for people who are dating, right? You don't want whoever it is, the dating app, to have your data while you're not there.
Right.
Why would you even have a dating app if you're in a monogamous relationship?
Sure.
Right? So it seems like it's a good idea, but it's also and it is a good idea. I'm not disputing that it is, but it's also an area that's ripe for scammers because their data, first off, Hinge doesn't want these people on their platform. And I'll bet that Hinge does a lot to keep them off. And maybe the reason this guy's profile got deleted is because Hinge said, okay, this guy's a scammer.
Yeah.
And they deleted it. It could be the case.
Could be. Could be that this person is just cycling through profiles.
That could also be the case. Yeah,
that's what I would suspect.
He said, I'm guessing it's a he because these guys usually are he's. Interesting that his last name is Mali, the name of a country. I guess that's believable.
It's just a common name.
Yeah. So those are my red flags, Dave.
Yeah.
Switching the profile gone, and saying that I'm a wine trader from France.
Yeah. Yeah, so they had online conversations back and forth for a couple of months. Said there were lots of flirtatious emojis, and Miss Datta said she felt like she had found her soulmate.
Right.
And as you alluded to, the bad guy convinced her to venture into crypto trading.
Right.
And provided her with a download link to what seemed to be a legit version of SoFi, which is that's a legit crypto app.
I thought SoFi was a lending platform.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, it says it was two-factor authentication and customer service. So the point is that this was a copy of that app, but it wasn't the real app.
Right. It's designed to look like it. SoFi is a personal finance company.
Yes.
So,
You are
okay.
correct. You are correct. In fact, this article points out that it is a reputable provider of loans and select banking services in the U.S. and Hong Kong.
Okay.
And also that it's often a target for impersonation by scammers because that's where the money is.
Right. And people have heard of it.
Right. So again, you called this one, Joe, because when this woman attempted to withdraw her funds from the app, she received a message requiring her to pay a 10% personal tax first. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yep.
So she reached out to her brother, who's a lawyer, who reached out to a private investigator, and between the two of them, they determined that she had indeed fallen victim to a crypto investment scam, the pig butchering.
Right.
Yeah. So to the tune of over $450,000.
Which is a lot of money.
It is a lot of money.
Especially for a 37-year-old.
Yes. This article points out that she had a high-paying job or has a high-paying job. She has a supportive family. So she's going to be okay, but she did have to sell her car and she had to move to a more affordable apartment to recover from this financially. But then, of course, there's all the emotional wreckage that comes from something like this.
Yeah, it's going to be devastating for this.
Just
this
being
lady.
taken advantage.
Yeah.
So there's a few precautions here that they list in this article. They say conduct thorough research, verify the other person's identity by searching for them online, checking social media profiles, or finding them on LinkedIn. Yes, that'll only get you so far because quite often these folks will spin up those media profiles. Yeah. It says be cautious of love bombing, and this is people just being really manipulative. This is something that also you hear about happening when people fall into cults. They get love bombed. This is an interesting one. Insist on video communication. One of the things they point out in this article is that they had video chatted a couple of times, but both times the bad guy hid his face, like had excuses for why he wasn't showing his face. So...
Interesting.
Yeah. And again, I don't know that this is the solution, but I guess it's a step along the way to try to make it a little safer. Safeguard your personal information and stay vigilant against get-rich-quick schemes.
Right.
I would say if anybody asks you for money, if anybody asks for any participation in anything financial,
right,
that is such a gigantic, big blinking red light.
Yes. Yeah, I feel the same way about that.
Yeah.
I think that there's, and maybe it's just because I'm jaded and have been cynical all my life, but, these people start a conversation with you and they say things, and I am usually very skeptical of people who like me right out of the gate.
Because
I
don't know, Joe. A handsome man like you, I think lots of people would like you out of the gate.
I can be difficult.
Smart as you are.
Smart as I think I am. That's why most people find me off-putting, I think. Anyway, when these people start doing that, when they start, another thing that will just set the hair on the back of my neck standing up is when they say my name over and over again. Hey, Joe, how are you, Joe?
Right, yeah.
I'm like, does that work on anybody? Does that not just irritate people?
I think there's evidence that it does, but I think there's a wide spectrum of people's skill level when it comes to those sorts of methods to establish rapport.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to work with a guy selling computer networks and all kind of stuff that use that trick, and now he sells used cars.
Okay.
It's probably a better place.
It worked its way down the food chain. Yeah. Yeah. Huh. It's interesting. along with the money thing, I think if anybody asks you for money,
Right.
that is the point to engage with a trusted friend.
Yes.
Friend, family member, someone who's not you,
Yes.
who is not in love,
Right.
who does not feel like they found the person of their dreams.
Correct.
And just humor us, right? Humor your old pals Dave and Joe.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
If someone asks you for anything financial in one of these, it doesn't matter how much you trust them or how much you think you love them.
Talk
just
to a friend.
Reach out to a friend or a family member and just tell them the story and say, there's probably nothing going on here, but I just want to run this by someone because chances are that person is going to have a different perspective than you and will... And who, look, maybe you're lucky and it is the person of your dreams, but
Right.
the odds are,
It's
the
not.
overwhelming odds are,
Right.
it is not.
Yeah. And even if it is a real person who just needs money, do you really want to date that?
Yeah. Right.
I mean, that would still be, even if I had even if I was single, which I'm not,
Yeah.
but I was dating and, I was dating somebody who said, I'm a little light this week. You got $100 I can borrow?
Right.
If they said that at dinner, I'd be like, check, please.
What if the opposite happened and someone came to you and said, hey, Joe, I miss money bags. Let me pay for everything. Would that also
Yeah.
raise your suspicions?
That would raise my suspicions as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's a story behind that, but we won't go into that.
Okay. That's a story for another day.
Yes.
Right. Fair enough. All right. Well, we will have links to all of our stories in the show notes. And of course, we would love to hear from you. You can email us. It's hackinghumans@n2k.com. Joe, it's time to move on to our catch of the day.
Dave, way back in episode 82,
Wow.
all the way back right before the pandemic in January of 2022, my story was about a scam involving fake license renewals from the New Zealand Transportation Agency.
Okay.
And I remember this being much more recent. Like, I thought it was like within this year.
Yes. Well, there's the pandemic for you.
Right.
It's a lost time. Yeah.
Well, our catch of the day comes from Ryan, who has done a great job sending it to us. It is one of those emails from a pretending to be from the New Zealand Transportation Agency.
Mm-hmm.
And Ryan writes, "Hi, Dave and Joe. I'm a longtime listener from New Zealand. A Kiwi.
A Kiwi.
Right.
Or as they say, a Kiwi.
Right. Who's your favorite New Zealander, Dave?
Who's my favorite New Zealander?
Yes.
Oh, the fine folks who made the Lord of the Rings. How about that?
Ah, okay.
I can't name a specific New Zealander. I'm embarrassed to say. I bet I know some, but
Lucy Lawless?
yeah, fine woman, sure.
But what about Bundy Aki?
No idea who that is.
He's a rugby player.
Okay.
And
take your word for that.
Probably my favorite New Zealander because I
All
love
right.
watching Bundy play rugby.
Fair enough.
And the Rugby World Cup's coming up. Bundy plays for Ireland though, which is
Well, New Zealand is on my list of places that I would love to see. It's just really far away from here.
It is.
It's about as far as you can go. That's not the moon.
Yes. I would like to see an All Blacks game in New Zealand. That's a bucket list item for me.
Sure. Yeah, that'd be great.
Anyway, again, we digress. Dave, I love your reenactment of the catch of the day. Pure gold. I'll be nominating you for an Emmy.
Oh, that's very kind.
Well, there you go, Dave. Finally an Emmy for you. Anyway, an email arrived in my colleague's personal, not work-related inbox, and she sought my advice, knowing that things didn't stack up. Side note, there are two phishing scams that are endlessly cycling around New Zealand, the NZ Post scam and the NZTA, which is the transit authority, or transit agency. The attached is an example of the NZTA scam, and it is really well done. The email itself looks fairly polished. The scammer even used a marketing system, knowing that it would give the email a higher probability of passing through any spam filters that may be present. Mm-hmm. However, the scammer forgot that the marketing system would also add a Portuguese unsubscribe message in the footer. So that's present there. So, Dave, the email is a picture that Ryan has sent. and it says at the top of it, Waka Kat. I don't even know how to say that.
Waka Katahi? Waka Katahi, I guess.
Waka Katahi?
Or Waka Katahi.
Right.
See, now this is dangerous ground here for me, Joe. Because,
Right.
Well, not that, my accents are at all precise, but the difference between an Australian accent and a New Zealand accent is, to the people who live there, is as clear as night and day.
Yes.
That's like you and me knowing the difference between a Boston accent and a Southern accent.
Yes.
But to us, it ain't so clear.
They sound very similar.
That's right. That's right. So I am sure that I am going to, rather than merely doing bad New Zealander, I'm going to do bad Australian, New Zealand mishmash. And for that, I apologize in advance. I mean no offense to the great people of the Southern Hemisphere. All right. It says, don't forget to renew your license or exemption. If you've already renewed within the last 24 hours, please ignore this reminder. It costs $109.08 for 12 months if you renew online. Here's your reminder number. Renew now. Thank you. It wasn't too bad.
No, it's not. But Ryan sent along a couple of screenshots and even a video of him interacting with the website.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a pretty sophisticated campaign. The URL is all wrong. And that's a red flag. So if you look at the click, the click here button, it won't direct you to the right website.
Okay.
Also, it does contain an unsubscribe message in Portuguese, and I can't read Portuguese, so I'm not going to pretend that I can do it. I'm struggling learning Spanish.
Right.
So this is in the video that Ryan sent. He goes to the site. Of course, the URL's wrong, and he starts entering garbage data in, and the site comes back and goes, oh, no, that's not right data.
Oh, okay.
So he enters some data that is correct, and it comes back with all the correct information. It's legitimate information. So either there's some data breach that these guys have gotten a hold of from the NZTA, or they're scraping data that's publicly available from a web page or some web service.
Right.
But they're getting the information somehow.
Okay.
And then it goes to a payment page. And by the way, they don't accept Discover. Ryan discovered that.
All right.
Because he entered that. You can go out and look up test credit card numbers. And every credit card provider has a series of test numbers that will never get approved, but are bona fide numbers in the right sequence, so you can test your regular expression against it.
Right.
Which make sure that the number's in the right format is what I should say.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So when you're writing the code, your code will validate it before it even bothers submitting it.
Right.
Because that costs money.
Okay.
So validate it for free before you send it.
Yeah.
So he uses a MasterCard, and that works on the local validation, and then he clicks submit, and it fails.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'm wondering if there's a way that you can DDoS this service by submitting a bunch of fake, no good credit card numbers.
Huh.
If you have a list of known bad credit card numbers, just keep submitting them and see if that gets them shut off or maybe costs them money or shuts them down. I don't know. Somebody who is familiar with the payment card industry would have to tell me that.
Right. Huh.
But it would work, and it would charge you $109 for 12 months, and you would not get that money. That would be a fraudulent transaction.
Right. And so you're expecting to get your renewal for your vehicle.
And there's probably some couple of month time delay that lets these guys get away with things.
Right. Yes. Departments of motor vehicles are not known for their promptness.
Yes.
Although I have to say, they have gotten a lot better. It's almost a cliche, but in my experience, it's a lot better than it used to be, for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, again, our thanks to Ryan for sending this over to us. It is very interesting. And, of course, we would love to hear from you. You can email us. It's hackinghumans@n2k.com. We were talking about the importance of strong security cultures. As part of their focus on new school security awareness training, KnowBe4 has released a tool called Security Coach that takes alerts from your existing security stack and sends immediate coaching to end users who've taken risky actions. With Security Coach, your users receive contextual, real-time coaching that reinforces your security awareness training and policies, improves knowledge retention, and helps your users to understand the risks associated with their behaviors. Security Coach helps you take a data-driven approach to quantifying and reducing human risk by combining your existing security layers with real-time behavioral coaching and new school security awareness training. Doing this significantly improves the understanding and retention of your users, leading to a stronger security culture across your whole organization. Learn more about Security Coach at knowbefore.com/securitycoach. That's knowbefore.com/securitycoach. Joe, I recently had the pleasure of speaking with Perry Carpenter. Great to have Perry back on the show.
It is indeed.
He is discussing his book, The Security Culture Playbook, an executive guide to reducing risk and developing your human defense layer. Here's my conversation with Perry Carpenter.
So first, my co-author, Kai Rohr, is an internationally well-known guy that has been studying security culture for most of his career. And so one of the things that we wanted to do with that is kind of merge our voices, because Kai is well known for his research into security culture. I'm pretty well known in my research for awareness and behavior. And as we come together, we can start to paint a lot more complete picture. But the other thing that really prompted this is nuance that's in the subtitle of the book. And I know it's a really, really long subtitle, but there are three critical things in it that we tried to pack in. Number one is an executive guide. And so this is meant not necessarily for the practitioner, but for the audience of a board of directors or a CIO or a CEO that really needs to understand that security culture is important. It's something that lives and breathes in every organization, whether you know it or not. And so the question becomes, how intentional are you about the security culture that you have? How sustainable is that? And what do you need to do about it? And so that executive piece is really critical. And our hope is that an executive picks that up, reads the first few chapters, and then says, oh yeah, we need to do something intentional with this. And then they hand it down to the person that can implement the vision that's explained there. The second piece that's in the title is reducing risk. And that really comes down to the fact that the entire reason that security exists isn't for the sake of security. And the entire reason that security awareness exists isn't for the sake of security. It's actually to reduce risk in an organization. And make the risk tolerable so that the organization can go forward and do the business that they've been formed to do. And so this is all about risk reduction and up-leveling the conversation to that executive level or board of directors level. And then that last piece is developing your human defense layer. And so this is about the human side of things, because one of the charts that we show early on is that there's a lot of spending that happens on the technology side of security. Every year we spend more and more on that, but data breaches are still going up. And when you look at the Verizon DBIR and other reports, the reason that we see the data breaches continue to go up has to do with the human side of things. And so our argument is that we need to put more intention on that so that we can then reduce risk.
Can we take a quick step back and talk about the notion of security culture itself? I mean, one of the things you explore in the book is this idea that security culture has a specific set of dimensions.
Yeah, you mentioned that we have different dimensions that we break security culture up into, and this is drawn from the social sciences. So we believe that you can measure any type of culture with this, but specifically we're looking at the security-related nuance. And so we break security culture into 7 different dimensions: attitudes, behaviors, cognition, communication, compliance, norms, and responsibilities. And one of the interesting things that we say in that is, as we measure that, we can see whether you're strong or you're weak in different areas, but that doesn't mean that all is lost or all is gained if you see one of those data points. So if you look at your aggregated security culture score and you're concerned about that, you don't have to tackle all 7 of those, because each of these has a gravitational effect on the other. If you're influencing cognition and giving people the right information to make the right decisions at the right time, you're probably also influencing their attitudes, and you're definitely influencing their behaviors if you see that come to pass. So you can strategically focus on 1, 2, or 3 of these, and you're going to be pulling the others along the way. There's another key thing that comes out in this book, and that is, and this is another reason behind why we created it in the first place, is there's a lot of, and has been a lot of, talk about quote-unquote security culture for years. And people are using that phrase in articles and journals and conference presentations and everything else. The thing that was missing, though, is an actual definition of it. And what we found, we at KnowBe4, so this is separate from Kai and I, our employer KnowBe4, commissioned a study with Forrester a couple years ago. And what we wanted to understand was, do people really know what security culture is, and do they value it? And we found that 94% of people value security culture. They believe that it's an important thing to reduce risk in their organization. But then we started to ask the more nuanced question of, what do you believe security culture is? And what we found was a shocking fragmentation of what people believe it actually is. Some people believe security culture is following policies. Other people believe that it's the establishment of a security awareness program. Other people believe that it's shared responsibility across an organization. So the funny thing is that somebody like me could stand on a stage and say security culture is important, and everybody in the room can be nodding their heads. Everybody believe that they're agreeing to the same thing, but everybody actually having a different conclusion of what that means.
Are those things mutually exclusive? I mean, can they? Is there anything that keeps them from coexisting?
No, there's not anything that keeps it from coexisting. But the thing that was shocking in that is the segmentation that we saw, in that somebody would believe that it's wholeheartedly one thing, that it's, let's say, following policies. And so if I believe a good security culture is following and mandating policies, I might go in pursuit of that in a way that it's absent of empathy, and maybe actually alienates my people in some way because I have this more authoritarian way of approaching it. If I see it only as disseminating awareness-related information, I could do that in a way that potentially, again, gives me a false sense of security because I'm getting the right information in front of people, but I might not be seeing the behavior follow-up with that. So again, there was this kind of shocking thing that we noticed, which was people are using this phrase over and over and over again, but without any definition behind that. And so that was leading to, I think, a lot of false assumptions with people in good faith believing that they're pursuing quote-unquote security culture, but they were doing it in a more narrow focus than really they needed to. And so they're putting all their faith in this one thing that they believe it to be, but kind of potentially ignoring a number of other things that it should be and that would have that gravitational effect to kind of move the culture where it needs to be. And so when we define security culture, we pull it from social science, very similar to the way that we pulled those 7 different dimensions of culture. And so we say security culture is the ideas, the customs, and the social behaviors of an organization that influence its security. And that's deceptively simple, but within that you do hear a few key terms here, ideas. So these are not just information, but things that permeate the people in the organization itself related to that security aspect of things. The customs, so that's the lived out behaviors and the ritualized behaviors, the things that are caught rather than taught by people, so that things that you'll see and bring on through peer pressure or through on-the-job training that may not even be codified in a policy, and the social behaviors, and very, very similar in that. Again, the things that kind of the unwritten rules of the organization that are just dictating the way that people live their security in that organization. That can be positive or negative. So we're not being prescriptive in that, but your security culture is in each of those things and in each of those 7 dimensions, positive or negative across that. Again, the idea there is you have that security culture whether you want it or not. It's, do you have the one that you want or not?
You know, you pointed out that in the subtitle of the book, you say this is an executive guide. How important is it that this comes from the top in an organization?
I think it's vitally important because if people don't feel like they are being consistent with the leadership of an organization in their values and their beliefs and the lived out behaviors, then there's a cognitive dissonance that comes in. Number one, they always want to know that they're going to be supported in the decisions that they make and the actions that they take. So that being valued from the top naturally starts to resonate down. The other thing is people don't like class systems, especially in the age that we're growing into right now and post-COVID. People do not like to see class systems in their organizations. So if there's one standard of behavior related to security that is pushed down to everybody else but not lived out within the executive ranks, people are going to rebel in different ways against that. So I think setting tone at the top is for sure really important. But there's also some nuance that you can add by finding people in the middle of the organization and even at the very bottom of the organization that have loud and clear voices within their social group, and you want to tap into them as well.
You know, I like to think in analogies. It helps me to, figure things out in my own mind sometimes. And sometimes when I'm thinking about security, I think about, the people who have a retail shop or something like that. And you'll sometimes see, the person behind the cash register will say, well, it's not my job to stop people from stealing things off the shelf. That's the security guard's job, and I'm not going to, I have enough to do. I'm busy. My job is hard enough without having to deal with those things. And we've got people who we've hired just to do that. So why should I take my time to do that? How do we fight that mindset within, other organizations?
That's a good question. So if you go into that 7 dimensions that we mentioned, there's 2 that come to mind there. One is attitudes, and then another one is cognition. And then, of course, norms is there too. So you can build that in as a norm. And that goes into one of the definitions that people were giving security culture before, which is when I talked about that fragmentation and the way that people understood it, one of those was security as a shared responsibility. Yeah, it is that, but it's not only that. But when you talk about the thing that you were wanting to get to, that shared responsibility piece of that, as expressed in norms and is understood in cognition and is rightly taken on in the attitude dimension, becomes really, really important because, I don't want the cashier to just wash their hands of something that's dangerous, or I don't want in my, let's say we're physically in an office and somebody comes in without a badge or somebody tries to tailgate behind me through the door. We don't want employees to wash their hands of that. So one of the things that you have to do is find ways to instill that social norm of the way that we do things here is we all take responsibility, and you have to model that out from the top, also in the middle and at the bottom of the organization through people that have social standing. And so you model that, you build that into your norms. You at a cognitive level, you teach people why it's really important that they step up and take that. You also have to make them feel really, really safe in doing that. Let's say everybody's on board and they believe that security is the right thing for the organization. They want to help manage risk. At that point, you have to empower them and you have to reduce fear. And empowering is saying, if you get this wrong and you challenge somebody that's maybe important, maybe it's a regional vice president that comes in, they just don't have their badge that day, and you challenge them and say, I'm sorry you don't have your badge, we're going to have to take you down to security and make sure that you have clearance, that you're not going to get punished for doing that step. So you have to empower them, you have to reduce fear of punishment, and then you also, let's say there's fear of that person's own physical safety. In that, I've seen somebody that's suspicious. I want to tell somebody but I'm also afraid to do something about it because I'm afraid that person is going to come after me. So I'm not going to physically go stop them. How do I do it? So at that point, you kind of go back to the see something, say something mentality. But the one thing that's always missing in see something, say something is here's the way to do that. So you have to follow up with here's the phone number to call, here's the person to contact. At that moment, maybe it is somebody else's job to put themselves physically in the way of that other threat that they see. And so it's not your job to take on the potential for physical harm. It is your job to say, oh, there is a potential for harm there. Let me contact the right person and do my part that way.
Joe, what do you think?
I'm a big fan of Perry.
Yeah.
I've talked to him a couple times.
Yeah.
Actually, I think I talked to him while he was writing this book.
Okay.
To get an idea of what it was that he was doing.
He said, Joe, I need an idea for a book.
No,
he
didn't need that from me. In fact, I was talking to him about an idea I have for a book.
He said, go away, Joe, I'm writing a book.
Right.
Okay.
But I think it's a good idea for him to get Kai involved in this because security awareness, which is Perry's area, is not going to do you any good in an organization if you don't have a good, positive, healthy security culture.
Right.
You can have all the security awareness in the world. If someone is afraid to report something to you, they're going to try to hide it.
Yeah.
So make sure you have a good, healthy security culture.
Right.
And I like how Perry defines that, which I'm going to get to in a minute. But Perry makes a point that should be obvious to everyone, but may not be. And that's all this security business is just about risk management.
Yeah.
Right? It's about reducing the risk or transferring the risk or accepting the risk.
Yeah.
Right? Those are the three things you can do with risk. So that's what this is about. You're just trying to make it less risky to operate your business.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting that spending on tech is going up and up and up, but breaches are still not stopping. And Perry cites the DBIR from Verizon.
Yeah.
I covered that a couple of weeks ago, or at least the social engineering portion of it a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
And it reminds me, this whole discussion reminds me of Bruce Schneier's statement that if you think technology is the solution to your problem, you don't understand the technology and you don't understand the problem.
Okay.
Right? Because he's right. That this is a human, there's a huge part of this problem that is a human problem. And I like what they've done here. I like how Perry and Kai have broken down the security culture into these dimensions, these 7 dimensions he talks about that you can measure. This is imperative. And we all know that security culture, your security culture is important. But the discussion that Perry has here is really, really enlightening. What does that mean? Mm-hmm. The image you have in your head is going to be different from the image everybody else has in your head, right? You could say security culture is important, and I think it's important to quantify it or define it at least, and I like his definition. The idea is the customs and social behaviors of an organization that influence its security. Mm-hmm. That's a great, concise, but rich, very dense definition of security culture.
Yeah.
And another key point that Perry makes is you have a security culture at your company right now, right?
Right.
That's very important to realize.
Yeah.
You need to know what it is.
Yeah.
And then you need to, before you can even start changing it. Right. And I like how Perry describes these things in terms of social sciences and how you go about building a good, healthy security culture is just as important as doing it. And I really like what he says about the gravitational effect that these things have on each other, right? Like behavior is going to have a thought on the cognitive process or an effect on the cognitive processes. So if you just try to start influencing behavior, you're going to start influencing the thinking around it. Like there's the old saying, you can't think your way into right living, you have to live your way into right thinking, right?
Interesting.
So you can move more than one needle on this 7 panel, 7 indicator, 7 dimensional.
Right.
You can move more than one of those dimensions by just going after one of them. I think that's a really important point.
Yeah.
I have not read this book yet. It's been on my list. I think I'm going to pick it up.
Yeah. All right. Well, our thanks to Perry Carpenter for spending the time with us. Again, the book is titled The Security Culture Playbook, an executive guide to reducing risk and developing your human defense layer. We appreciate Perry taking the time for us. We want to thank all of you for listening, and of course, we want to thank our sponsors at KnowBe4. That is our show. We want to thank you all for listening. Our thanks to the Johns Hopkins University Information Security Institute for their participation. You can learn more at isi.jhu.edu. N2K Strategic Workforce Intelligence optimizes the value of your biggest investment, your people. We make you smarter about your team while making your team smarter. Learn more at n2k.com. Our senior producer is Jennifer Iben. This show is edited by Elliot Peltzman. Our executive editor is Peter Kilpie. I'm Dave Bittner.
And I'm Joe Kerrigan.
Thanks for listening.